Good afternoon. This is Julie Davis-Colan. I'm here with Lee Colan.
Hey, folks.
Glad you could be with us this afternoon. We are here today for a Power of Positive Coaching webinar, and we're excited to bring this to you. Our company is called the L Group, and we work with leaders to help them achieve individual and personal and business growth. So we're excited to bring you this as another tool to put in your chest. As we go through, this will be about a 45-minute webinar. If you have any questions, please put them in the question and answer section, and then we'll be able to get them. It's just a little easier than using the chat function. And let's see, we'll wait a couple minutes.
We're gonna, and also you guys will get the
yes,
recording afterward and the slides. And if you need to bump off early or something, everyone's gonna get everything. So within 24 hours.
Thank you for completing me.
No worries.
Okay, we really appreciate your time today, and this is a really important topic. We're gonna put this topic kind of in context of the habits and mindset you need for positive coaching, but also within today's work environment and kind of the future of work, so that it has some relevance for today and tomorrow as well. The power of positive coaching, the essence of it and the real power in it comes, I can go back to one study from Korn Ferry, and it shows some very compelling statistics. In fact, positive coaching increases performance 36%. Negative coaching decreases performance 26%. That's a significant differential. So the theories and such that we're going to talk about are based in science, they're applied as an art, and they're tools that you could put to use right away, whether you lead a large team, whether you lead an entire company, or whether you just are working with peers and mentoring someone. These tools will be good for you to use. So did you have something to add in?
Well, I'm just saying, Julie applies these coaching approaches with me all the time when I have to improve something, so they do work.
Thank you, thank you. So I'd like to go a little bit and talk about today's work, the shift in today's workforce. So Lee, could you change
sure.
for me? There's a great, as you know, Gallup, you've all heard of Gallup. They do these studies that are huge. They're based on tens of thousands of interviews with employers and leaders across the world. So they aggregate big data. They do meta-analysis, which are analyses on analyses. So very valid information. So just wanted to provide you with a glimpse of some data that's analyzed from 2016 to 2018 to look at where workers shift, where we're looking at shifts in the workforce. So we'll look at the past and then today. So in the past, workers looked at, work, I mean, how much do I make? What is my pay? And now people, and you've heard lots of discussions about this over the years, are really saying, well, what's my purpose? They want to have meaningful activity during their workday. And
can I add one thing to that? Sure. It's not just purpose in their job, it's purpose, does my organization feel purposeful? Like, am I helping work towards something, a company that makes the world a better place? So it's kind of individual and organizational purpose that becomes important to them.
Absolutely, good, thank you for that. In the past, looking at my satisfaction, I'm satisfied with work. And now there is a craving for development, and that's where coaching comes in. An employee isn't just comfortable, having a job and doing it the same way, even if they do a great job of that, and just staying with that. I think growth is a natural thing for anyone. It's a natural in plants and in life, and I think now we're seeing it at work. That isn't just a luxury, that's something that people really are wanting. In the past, you thought, oh, my boss is Jay or my boss is Julie. And instead of just thinking of someone as your boss, they're really going to a perspective of my coach. And many people with matrix organizations have multiple bosses and therefore hopefully multiple coaches that can help bring the best out of them. So that's a very big shift, but also that gives bosses, that can be you or your boss, a new responsibility. And with this product and this framework, we're trying to give you a tool to help you become an effective coach. It doesn't mean you have to go out and get coaches for every employee, but how do you fulfill that role as a boss for employees as a coach? In the good old days, I don't even know they're good old days. In the past, there was an annual review, and you still might have that, to look at key metrics that are accomplished through the year. But in addition to those times when you sit down for key metrics review, it's really an ongoing conversation. The workers today and people today are used to constant communication.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's one way, as in a text, and it's not necessarily a dialogue. But in these situations, and it kind of goes with coaching, people want an ongoing conversation, little bits of feedback so they can take baby steps toward progressing toward growth and doing better in their job or a job that's more challenging for them. In the past, possibly looking at weaknesses. Julie, here are the things you do wrong. And there's still, and by saying positive, let me clarify, and by saying the next slide, we want to focus on strengths, it doesn't mean we ignore weaknesses, and it doesn't mean we ignore negativity. It's we work with negativity or we work with weaknesses and really focus on strengths. We know from lots of research that the best performance comes from focusing on strengths. And the last one, you know, people would say, oh, that's my job. And the way workers are looking at this around the world is really, you know, your job, you spend more time there than you do any place in your life. And instead of being work-life balance, work-life integration, it's just my life. You know, it's a part of my life. We're wired, we get information from personal and professional kind of consistently throughout the days. And people are looking at it in a much bigger sense. It's not just a job. This is really an important part of my life. So we want to go ahead, Lee, you want to do a poll and see some things?
We're going to go ahead and launch a poll now, folks. You'll see it on your screen. Just take a minute there and see kind of which of these kind of shifts in focus do you see most prominently in your organization. So if you could take a second on that, we'll just give you another few seconds. Lots of polls. We'll do a few polls today. It's gonna feel like you're in the November election, but I would love to get your feedback on some things. So another few seconds here. It's kind of fun.
I was gonna say, it's actually satisfying.
It's like CNN, getting real-time feedback here.
Yeah.
3 more seconds, folks. Take a second and cast your vote, and we'll wrap it up and kind of feed it back to you guys. On the count of 3, 2, 1, one more second. All right, good deal. We'll end the polling and go ahead and share the results now. Julie, you want to talk about that?
So the purpose, and Lee, you alluded to, you know, my purpose and your company's purpose are really what you guys were talking about is really where you're seeing the biggest shift right now. Very early on, interesting, the first responses were on my development.
Right.
You know, and I think that's
still
really
strong.
It's really personal to people. You know, like that, and it feels good. It feels fulfilling. And so it's interesting to see those playing out. And again, this is from worldwide research, not just even the US. So I think it's pretty consistent. So and with that as kind of a background, I'm gonna ask Lee to share a few things. Lee's background, he is an organizational psychologist, has a, I can talk about him better than he can. So he has a Ph.D. in industrial organizational psychology, a big word. He has a background in psychology. That's where we met back as seniors in college. And he's
10 years ago.
He's written 15 books. Yeah, 15. He's been nominated as the world's best thinker. I kind of have to keep his head in check when I get too big into the room on some of those. But he, if I might say
just to clarify, it was management thinker, I'm not up there with Einstein or anything.
Well, he brings great structure, light, and insight. So I'm going to let him share some of the next thoughts with you.
Well, that's sweet. Thank you, Julie. Appreciate it. Well, good to see you folks. Thanks again for being here. Let me just kind of walk through kind of a traditional coaching model and then kind of a positive mindset and habits coaching model that we're going to kind of shed some light on today. So if you look at your screen here, just real quick, I'll just kind of quick overview. The traditional model kind of reactively addresses poor performance. The positive coaching model facilitates good performance proactively. It's the old model's intervention-oriented versus prevention-oriented. Addresses weaknesses versus strengths. So you can see on down the line here, you know, traditional coaching models are very kind of script-based. Like if someone says this, then you say that. This model we're going to share with you is based on basic human needs, understanding the science behind human behavior and organizational dynamics. And that way it becomes a truth. So regardless of the culture you're in, the generation you're coaching, the industry that you're in, these things hold true. But more importantly, it doesn't put you in a situation like you're playing chess, like, oh, she said this, so I got to say this. It's just understanding the dynamic. And with that, you're much more equipped to kind of be nimble and also be more authentic, like be yourself, versus kind of feel like, oh, I've got to say this or got to say that.
Sure.
So you kind of just see the difference here of this positive mindset and habits coaching model. So with that in mind, here's kind of the broad context for this whole model. And it's a simple multiplicative equation. Remember in grade school, in a multiplicative equation, if any single component is 0, the product is 0. But if we just modestly increase each component, we get this great multiplier effect. So the two components here are a positive coaching mindset and then positive coaching habits. That's how we're gonna break down the rest of our discussion today. So we have to bring the right mindset to the table. Think of the time you're with a loved one or a friend or anything, or a coworker, and you go into that going, oh man, this is going to be a drag, or this is a pain, or this guy just doesn't get it, or my girlfriend just doesn't understand me this way. You go in with that negative mindset. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's exactly what we're going to get. So when we say a positive coaching mindset, Julie, it's really a positive mindset, right? Mm-hmm. Of setting your expectations. And we're going to talk about a few things you can do to make that happen. But if you don't have that, you can do all the habits right that we'll talk about after that, and you still won't get to where you need to be. By the same token, you can do all the right coaching habits without the right mindset, and you're dead in the water. So this really kind of, they go hand in hand here, or head and heart, if you will. But we're going to talk about both of those first, or each of those one at a time. So think about it this way, as an aspiring coach, just like a boat, it leaves a wake. Have you ever seen a boat, you see kind of the wake in the distance? You ever gone skiing or tubing? It's very evident to see that wake. And it's the same way with a coach. You leave a two-sided wake in your path, and that wake is of positive and winning relationships and positive and winning results. Relationships and results, not either or. It's not, I have great relationships and no results. Well, that's a party. That's just a group of friends, right? And it can't just be all results, drive, and no relationships. That's not a very great place. That's not sustainable. You might call it a sweatshop, right? So it's really both. And the best leaders know how to get both. And they get the results by creating the strong relationships. But it's an and both world, not an either or world here. Mm-hmm. So what I'd like to do now is just kind of show you these 4 areas of personal awareness or leadership awareness we need to have to bring a positive coaching mindset to the table. So we have to understand our thoughts, our purpose, our values, and our emotions. All critical areas of awareness, deep levels of awareness. And you could say, you know, the name of our firm is the L Group. We believe leadership's an inside job. So the L stands for leadership. So it's 3 stacked L's in our logo, because we believe that it starts with your personal leadership, then your team leadership, and then your organizational leadership. But many books and training is focused on team and organizational leadership. These are how you develop great strategies and cultures, and that's great. But fewer things are focused on what's your personal leadership, what's your character, how do you understand yourself, your purpose, your values, how do you live out those values, how do you understand your emotions and put those in check, put your ego in check to make sure you're serving others. That's really the key. The leaders that are the best really are really strong as personal leaders. Then it emanates out from there. So this whole portion right here that we'll talk about is really about just that, your personal leadership, in this case specifically, creating a positive coaching mindset. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Julie. In fact, we'll stop slide sharing right now real quick and let Julie do this. So let me just do this. Okay. So stop share. Sorry. Julie is a corporate health expert. She has her master's in preventive medicine from the Ohio State University School of Medicine. They'll be very thrilled that I said the Ohio State University, not just Ohio State University. We've authored the last 6 books together, also a best-selling author herself, and is also only one of 1,200 people worldwide that is certified as a positive psychology practitioner by the Flourishing Institute. So she really is very deep into this area and understands the science behind it. Our kind of gift, I think, that we try to bring to the table is taking science and making it kind of approachable and applicable. And so Julie's going to start off by telling us a little bit about our awareness of our thoughts and how that can help us have a positive coaching mindset.
Thoughts are interesting. And believe it or not, you have over 50,000 of them a day. And, you know, with all of this talk about positive, you know, mindset, positive thoughts, I want to just speak to the negative thoughts and like, you know, negativity is natural in your mind. It was actually a safety mechanism back in the day when there's a saber-toothed tiger running around you. And you have all these thoughts, 50,000 plus coming in your day. And, you know, there are some of them that are going to be thoughts you don't like, and they're negative thoughts. And I'm going to say, don't try to block those out. If you have those, you just say, thank you for that thought, but I'm going to choose another thought, kind of being intentional with that. To tie together your thoughts and the rest of your body and how you react, I'm going to ask you to do something real quickly for me. So if you close your eyes for just a second, and I want you to picture a very yellow, juicy lemon. It smells heavenly. It's just fresh from a tree. And I want you to smell it. And then I'm actually going to cut it open. And now it's open, and there are two halves of it. And it's very, very juicy. And you're getting it all over your fingers, but you can smell the lemon really strongly. Now we're cutting it in quarters. And I'd like you to take a quarter of that and just put it in your mouth. And I want you to taste the strong flavor of the lemon. Okay, you can open your eyes now. If you're anything like me and many people, you actually started to salivate. There was nothing there. I didn't give you a lemon. I just talked you through that. But that's a visceral reaction to a thought. And so getting your thoughts in the right place is really important. You want to control your media input now more than ever. We always say at most, just take a little dose in the morning like a vitamin and a little at night for your safety and information. But don't let that ruminate over time all day long. In your brain, what actually happens with the thought is that there are two neurons or nerve cells, and the thought jumps over what's called a synapse, or that gap between. The more you have that thought, the stronger that bridge is. So those become dominant thoughts, and you want to choose those things you think most significantly about. So in this case, I want you to be thinking about when you look at your team, what are the strengths? What are the strengths that I see in Lee? What are the strengths that you see in Casey? And really start in your work life looking for the things that people do best. I think it was Ken Blanchard that used to say, you know, walk around and catch people doing something right. It's the same notion. You want to look for the strengths because, again, this entire premise and data shows that working with people's strengths is really the foundation for best performance. It also makes for a much happier human being, both the one that's providing the input and the one that's receiving it.
Hey, Julie, can
Yes.
I interject my favorite quote here?
Yes.
I love from John Maxwell, leadership guru. He said that our job as leaders, you can insert our job as coaches, is to not put in what God left out, but it's to draw out what God put in. So that's really kind of finding people's natural gifts and helping them flourish by not only identifying them, but giving them opportunities to kind of develop in that gift. And that kind of ties back to the whole power of strength-based coaching you talked about earlier versus weakness-based coaching.
And so the last thought that I'm going to provide you in the thought section, and we have much more on this, but is really, again, being intentional and selecting words. So what I'd like you to do right now is do not think of a pink elephant. No matter what you do, don't think of a pink elephant. And I'm going to guess what you're thinking of. A pink elephant. And you're like, okay, I thought you just told me not to, and I'm trying not to have these thoughts. Well, there's a reason for that. And the brain has a really difficult time thinking about the word not. It almost takes it away. So you almost do what you said not to do. I know that there's a new game show, and it's kind of a bad trick because it's telling you don't do this. And I know that people are going to do it, not win any money, because your brain doesn't really hear that. So when you think about coaching, looking for strengths, controlling your input of your media, and then also realizing that telling people not to do something is really not the strongest way. It's not the thought that you want to put in their head or have in yours. You want to think, what do I want to do in my coaching? What do I want to do? Kind of omitting that word not.
For sure. So create a positive expectation for people. So thank you, Julie. Appreciate it. So let me touch it. We talked a little bit about awareness of your thoughts. Thank you, Julie. I'll talk about purpose now, just real quickly. So as a leader, we need to understand, and as a coach, what am I here for? And really, it's not about us. It's for the other people. Leadership isn't about how many people serve us. It's about how many people we serve. When our son played football years ago, sounds weird, years ago, right? His coach had these great t-shirts for the whole team. It had a big old team, T-E-A-M, and a little bitty me, N-E underneath it. And the point was, the team is bigger than me. And it's the same thing with coaching. We have to subordinate our own needs to make sure we're addressing the needs of the person that we're helping and supporting at that time. So really just understanding, why am I here as a coach or a leader? What's my job? And referring to Ken Blanchard again, he's been a mentor of ours, is that he'll say that ego is the biggest leadership derailer. It's the biggest derailer for any leader or coach, right?
Sure.
And so if we can't get that out of the way, we think that we're here, everyone's here for me. You generate that report for me. You accommodate my schedule. You can sit around waiting for me to show up for a meeting, right? It's not about that. So we know the best leaders really know how to kind of push their egos aside and make sure they have clarity about, how do I best serve my people? We're really here to serve. The best leaders understand that. So really being clear about what your purpose is in the coaching situation. So it's not about venting because I'm really upset with Julie. It's about, how do I help this person be successful? How do I help them get an A, right? So being clear about that. So a little bit on thoughts and purpose. Let me just shift to values real quickly, and thinking about, really, it's amazing how many executives we'll talk to 25 years into their career, and they're not really clear. Say, what are your 3 leadership values? And they'll say, they'll have to think about it. You shouldn't have to think about it. You should really clear your leadership values, your coaching values. When I was in the corporate world, I always had these 3 F's. I was focused, fair, and fun. That was it. And I would talk to my teams when I went in. This is what you could expect from me because I'm focused, fair, and fun. And by the way, here's what I expect from you because those are my values, right? My leadership values, at least. So we didn't have to do the dance. People didn't have to figure out who is this new guy coming in. They kind of knew right away. So you need to be clear about, what are your kind of core leadership or coaching values as you're interacting with this person. And it shouldn't be a secret. We'll share with you afterward kind of a simple form. We have this in the book also, of kind of just documenting that and being clear about, these are my values, and these are the behaviors that I'm going to display because of those values, and these are the behaviors I would expect from my team because of those values. Now, there are 3 kind of core, we call them foundational kind of coaching values, and those are the values of integrity, humility, and caring. Like, you got to have those, and even like integrity is so key. Listen, if you don't have integrity, number one, people see that and they're not going to follow you, right, Julie? And guess what? If nobody's following you, you're not really leading. So that's so core, your integrity, but also humility and caring, just core values. But above and beyond that, I'll be thinking about what's kind of really important for you. So having some reflective time to think about that, bounce it off friends, and hey, this is what I really believe and what I try to live. Am I living that out? Like, be careful about putting aspirational values out there to your team, that things you're working on, but you don't really live them out yet. Think about things you're doing right now, and be consistent. That's the key thing. People want to view you as being high integrity and authentic with what your action, the actions and your words. We always say your say-do ratio, right? You want a really good say-do ratio. I want most of the things that I say that I do, I follow up on. So there's alignment there. So we talked a little bit about thoughts, awareness of your purpose, awareness of your values, and Julie will wrap us up with awareness of your emotions.
Emotions, boy, that's an interesting one right now, right? I mean, everyone's are riding highs, so we speak. And the most important thing in any topic right now that you're hearing is really discussing anything with empathy. And this has been, way before the pandemic when we wrote this book, but empathy is so critical, but it's also important to understand your own emotions. And so empathy in conversations, and even being kind to yourself. And we see that, you really want to understand your own emotions and kind of see where you are, so you're not reacting to others as you're working with them. And there's a tool in here we call the 5x5 rule. And if something isn't going to matter in 5 years, then don't spend more than 5 minutes on it at work. I mean, if it's going to be, someone's just reacting and they're over emotional about something at the time, seek to understand, seek to be empathetic, but don't make it a big deal. So that 5x5 rule is a quick little tool there. Also, I'm going to just talk about the power of the pause and really thinking about, when something happens, take a moment. And this won't be the only time I'll talk about a pause, but taking a moment to collect your thoughts and figure out how you want to respond so you're not reacting. And we'll talk more when we get a little further about the coaching habits, about, how questions go and the pause that you need to have in order to let someone respond. But taking a pause is a really critical thing. And, when you're thinking about emotions, I want to just point out one little trivia fact. And we're talking about positive emotions, negative emotions, all of them. And when you think about emotions, you might be thinking more about negative emotions, because they just, And why is that? Am I a negative person? No, it's because the bad feels stronger than the good feels good. And in fact, that translates into the English language. I'm going to peek down here. So in the English language, there are about 62% of our emotional words are negative and 38% are positive. So the strong feeling that you get from negative, I mean, you really have to be intentional about it and kind of intentionally choose positives, sort through your own thoughts, give yourself pauses, think about that 5 to 5, just a few tips on that one for your mindset.
Thank you, Julie. So with that in mind, why don't you guys engage with us, if you don't mind, in another poll and kind of just tell us a little bit about which of these areas of self-awareness do you see the greatest need in your organization? Which of these areas?
Well, that line was fast. We'll see if it.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
The emotion one.
Emotion jumped out there pretty quick, and they're like, no other votes, guys. So the race is getting closer now. I feel like I'm at the basketball game, you know, watching those little those jumping beans going around the circle.
And we're living in such an unprecedented time right now that I can't imagine that emotion is going to be number one. I mean, it's for so many reasons, countless reasons for all of us right now. So I think that's going to be
we'll end the polling now, folks, and we'll share the result in a second. Sorry, we're getting a little bit of a delay here, and here we go. We should be able to share them right now. And as Julie alluded to, we're there we go. You can see them on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, emotions are obviously what people want, you know, others to have self-awareness of, and again, going back to this mindset, we have to start with ourselves, you know, and really look at our own, because just because we feel so up in angst and we expect others to respond, but they're feeling that way too. I mean, we're in an unprecedented time. So that makes good sense.
For sure, for sure. Okay, so we talked a little bit about kind of building a positive coaching mindset. And now let's go to the second part of that equation, which is building the positive coaching habits here. So I'm going to share my screen for a second here. We've got a few delays here on our side. So let me just kind of walk you through it until we're able to kind of pull that back up. So the 5 positive coaching habits are really simple. And again, they're based on science. Julie and I always say there's no rocket science in what we talk about, but there's science, right? So it doesn't have to be complicated, but it can be supported by science. And that's the main thing. So there are the 5 habits are these: explain, ask, involve, measure, and appreciate. We'll put a slide up here as soon as we can in a second. But those are the habits here. And when you explain expectations, you get alignment. When you ask questions, you get engagement. When you involve your team, you get ownership. When you measure results, you get accountability. And when you appreciate people, you get commitment. So the right-hand side of that, those are the habits, but the left-hand side we rattled off about alignment, engagement, ownership, accountability, commitment. Those are the payoff. That's what we want as a leader, right? As a coach. So we can't just kind of conveniently do like kind of what I call salt and pepper coaching. Well, I don't really want to ask questions right now. I'm busy. But I'll do a little explaining here, and I'll appreciate someone here, but maybe not all the time. These are habits. The word is habits. There are 5 coaching habits, so that we have to do them diligently day in and day out. And it's very predictable. When you do these habits, when you explain expectations, you get alignment. If you skip on explaining expectations, you're going to get misalignment. Bottom line, very predictable human behavior. It's going to happen. If you ask questions, you automatically get people engaged in a conversation. If you don't ask questions, they become disengaged. It's very predictable, okay? So really thinking about these 5 habits here. I'm going to try to launch a poll here and see if we can have any luck to let you guys see them, but we're, I'm sorry, I'm freezing up here. That's okay. So, the next slide was a visual gag, so we got to explain it to you. So we'll got to go through that one, so we'll just roll with it. So it's easy to just kind of like sweep things under the rug. Stephen Covey has a great quote from years ago from one of his best-selling book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He said, unexpressed emotions don't go away. They just rear their heads in uglier ways. And it's the same, we have a corollary to that that says, unaddressed performance issues don't just go away. they just rear their heads in uglier ways. So you may want to go, oh, you know what? This guy's not performing. It's not going so well. I don't want to spend the time on coaching him. I'm too busy doing some other stuff. Let me just sweep that under the rug, right? Ain't going to happen. So what happens is we end up just kind of burying our head in the sand, right? I'm thinking, if I could just go away, that could just go away. We know intellectually it's not going to happen. Well, we just don't want to deal with it, right? So we put our head in the sand. Well, what happens when you put your head in the sand? What's showing, right? Our rear end. It doesn't really help our credibility at all. So our people around us see it like, gee, why isn't Lee dealing with that issue? He's putting his head in the sand. That's not an attractive view, right? So we have to make sure that we are dealing with these issues proactively, and it's much easier. It takes 1 unit of energy to deal with an issue like right there. Julie and I have an issue. Julie, let's just talk through it and address it. If I wait a week or so, now it's like 5 units of energy. It's gotten a little bigger. I'm a little more frustrated. I'm angry at her. She's thinking, well, gee, Lee comes out with a blind spot. Why didn't he just tell me before? And now we're kind of doing this and we're not in the right mindset. And then I wait a month until I finally get some outside pressure to deal with something. Now it's 500 units of energy, really taking all my time. I have to engage human resources. She's calling in lawyers. I mean, it gets very ugly. So the more we can kind of be proactive, deal with things up front in these 5 positive coaching habits: explain, ask, measure, involve, explain, ask, involve, measure, and appreciate, we're better off. So we're going to walk through each of those now, and Julie's going to kind of walk through kind of how you have to describe it to them. Julie's not able to see it at this point. And you're going to get all the slides. Don't worry about it. So this is kind of one tool you could use to help explain expectations so that you can get alignment.
Okay. And I was just noticing the recording might have done
No, it's okay.
Okay.
It's all right.
All right. So I'm not very technical. Sorry about that. You didn't explain this well to me. No. The first habit is explain. And, you know, we've seen from the poll where people want purpose. They want to know that their work is worthwhile. I mean, when you were little and someone told you just do that, what was the number one question you say? But why? But why? And your parent may have said, oh, doesn't matter why, just do what I tell you. We do not like that. This is all, again, going back to fundamental human needs. We like to know why, and we like to know the impact. Julie, do this, then this will happen. So that is no different in the work setting as well. So again, this is the key habit of explain. And what you'll see in your follow-up notes, and I'm sorry that you can't see now, is really what we call a circle of consequences. So if you would envision a circle for me, and you may be able to see it now.
Oh, and there was my visual gag. I get to show it now, guys.
He's so excited about that.
Made me so happy. Okay.
I know. Okay, you can move on. Thank you. My circle of consequences. When you think about yourself, you think, oh, I'm just one person possibly in a small company. I'm not the boss. I don't make sense. I don't make a big difference. I'm one person in a large company, or I'm just a leader of X, or I'm the leader of the whole organization. Each individual impact has a ripple effect, and this circle really illustrates that. Your personal impact and all of that goes into it, your mindset, your habits impact your performance. Your performance impacts your team. The team impacts the organization. The organization impacts the customer. The reason we're all here is to do something for the customer, and then that affects shareholder returns, the community that we live in, the viability of our business, and how it interacts with the world at large. So one person has a huge impact. All of these consequences go right around the circle. So it's really important that each person understand why. It takes a little bit more time, yes. Why are we doing this? How does this fit in the bigger picture? And what's the impact of this going to be? Understanding it's just my personal impact possibly, and I might be the CEO and know that I have a large impact, or I might be the lowest person on the totem pole, but each person has an impact on that. So that's really the first habit of explaining. And again, on that, we want to tie to the larger purpose on that. I'm going to talk next about the second important habit, which is asking questions. Asking questions, when people are asked questions, they begin engagement. When you tell people something, it's easy for them just to tune out. So what I want to point out here is really thinking about, well, why are you asking? Are you asking to hear yourself ask a question? I know I've been guilty of that before, but do you want to understand? Are you trying to assess something? Do you want to encourage innovation, or do you want to motivate someone? Thinking about your reason for asking helps you formulate the right questions. And really thinking about what you want on the output. So I talked before about the pause, and I don't know about you, but sometimes we'll ask a question and it can be someone that's more introverted, someone who's more thoughtful. They might take longer to respond than we think we would. And so we might throw in a second question while they're still trying to formulate the question, the answer to the first question. So the pause is really important in asking questions. You're purposeful, but you're also giving people a chance to respond. Another technique is also to give them a way out and say, you know, if you need some time to think about that, that's okay. You can get back to me. But people can feel like on, you know, right on the edge when you're asked questions, like, especially if this isn't a rhythm you've started before, you've got to get into that conversation mode. So asking questions is really critical on that.
And pauses, as you know, we all know, 3 seconds can seem like 3 hours, right? So make sure, like, oh, I gave him a second, like, well, we always say sometimes count to 10 in your head. It might seem like an eternity, but let someone process something depending on their style and stuff. So just being comfortable with silence is really important. Can I just add one more thing to this, Jewel? When you think about these 4 kind of objectives in your questions, they can apply to whether you're trying to understand a person or a process or a project.
Absolutely.
So 2 different levels. And again, in the middle of the book, there's almost like a centerfold that has all these sample, like 50 questions or maybe way more than that for each of these objectives for a person or a project or a process. So really, I don't think people are as thoughtful, or leaders. I think asking questions is the most underutilized leadership tool we have.
It's free.
Yeah, it's free. That's right.
It's always available.
Yeah,
and it really leads to engagement.
Right.
I mean, it is the key to engagement. We know that an engaged workforce, it works better for everyone. All the benefits just are layered on top of that. So yeah, good point. So we'll talk a little bit about involve.
Right. Explain, ask, involve. We'll take you through the 3 again. So listen, bottom line is that people support what they help create, right? So we want to involve them in solutions and stuff. And so there are 2 types of knowledge I want to talk about here. So there's dashboard knowledge as a leader that you have. That's kind of like, okay, our EBITDA is good, our call times are good, our general metrics are good, general business performance, right? Then there's under the hood knowledge where, gee, you got a spark plug. That's where your leading indicators are. Spark plug's getting a little corroded. The fan belt's kind of getting a little worn out. The oil's starting to get low. So as a leader, you may have been under the hood at one point. Now you've been promoted. The challenge we see with many leaders is like, oh, I've been there before. I've been under the hood. But guess what? Under the hood knowledge and data changes by the second. And surely in today's world, literally by the second. Right? So you can't rely on that knowledge afterward just because you have been in that job. But it's a great opportunity for you to reach out to those people and say, hey, tell me what's going on out there. Tell me about what you're hearing from our customers. Give me some leading indicators of what's happening. You'd be amazed how that kind of, you can capture data that you're blind to. You think you might know, but you're still at the dashboard here. You don't know what's going on under the hood. So, and people come up with great solutions. Hey, I noticed if we did this, if we did that, we might be able to come up with some better things. Very simple things, but involve your people in the decisions. And just a great example currently is that a lot of organizations now are saying, hey, they're surveying their workforce. Hey, tell us, when do you feel comfortable coming back to work? They're not just going, hey, July 15th, we're coming back to work and that's it, right? So they're saying, okay, we know, we don't understand what's going on in your life, your own personal comfort level, what you're trying to juggle, a father-in-law that might be ill or vulnerable, and kids that don't have daycare for them now. So they're asking what's going on under their personal hood, literally, right? So it's a great example of that. So, but even on day-to-day stuff, you're trying to solve problems, innovate new things, get into new markets, get under the hood and get close to your team and ask those questions and involve them in solutions or ideation. Then they'll feel like owners of it. And that's a huge step to kind of try to getting that ownership behavior, which is really what we all want as a leader. We want our people acting like owners of the business. So explain, ask, involve. Let's move on to measure. All right. So we measure to get results. It builds accountability for us, right? And I remember when I was in the corporate world, I was an executive, and I thought I was really good, probably a little big of a head, but I thought I was really good about like really appreciating my people. But as I reflected back, what I really appreciated was their performance, right? I didn't really appreciate the people as much. So it's great to appreciate the guy that could come through on a project, or the woman that could run payroll all weekend and get us back up on track or whatever. But I wasn't as good about seeing the person behind the employee and appreciating who they were, what they brought to the table, what challenges they were leaving behind at home to stay focused at work. So that's really key to make sure we're as I'm getting ahead of myself on appreciation, but we're appreciating that. But I was really good at measuring the results, but not really accessing the person. But here is a quick matrix on making sure we're measuring results and the behavior, another area we need to balance. It's great if we kind of are getting the results, but if they're not demonstrating the behavior, the sales guy that kills it, but he's really toxic to your culture. It's always a tricky, we coach around that a lot with executives, like, well, this guy's killing it, but he's also killing my organization, right? So you can see on this matrix here, on the vertical axis is the results, and the bottom axis, the horizontal axis, is on behavior. So if you have low positive behavior and low results, you got to coach them on skills and tools. If you have positive behavior and high results, top right here, you got to just coach them up. That's great. Low behaviors, in other words, are not consistent with your values, your culture, and low results, you need to coach to exit. Let's be real here, right? We're all about positive coaching, but if you feel like you could go to sleep at night, you've been working with this person on their performance, get them the tools and on the behaviors, and it's not happening, that's toxic on two levels for your organization. And last, if the results are high, but this is the tricky one, but the behavior is low, that's really tough. So you really need to coach on what are your motives? Why is it that you're letting your ego or yourself get in the way and create this kind of culture, either this competitiveness or this undermining or whatever it might be, that's not helping our culture. And as a leader, you absolutely need to be the steward of your culture. And I think we're going to start seeing more of a shift that way. Like if leaders got good results, but they had crummy cultures, that was like, okay, not anymore. I think it's an and both world. Remember that two-sided way, results and relationships, and leaders and coaches today are expected to be able to deliver both. So we talked about explain, ask, involve, measure, and I'll let Julie kind of wrap up with the last one about appreciation.
So Lee kind of talked about this, talking about really appreciating the person behind the results. And I'm going to talk quickly about the impact of positive to negative inputs, or what we call a ratio. There's a study looking at the best ratio of positive to negative inputs on a team. And I'm going to create an analogy. A positive input is like a feather and a negative is like a rock. I alluded to the negative feels stronger than the good feels. And so when we look at this, we have to do 3 feathers to equal 1 rock, 3 positive inputs to equal 1. And in marriages, interestingly, it's at least 5 to 1.
That's right.
No cap on that. You can do as many as you want, but an example of a positive input is appreciation. Appreciating little things on a daily basis. And again, going back to that ongoing conversation is the need, picking out things that people do right, catching them do things right on a regular basis, and then really appreciating people. We'll go into an office and look at a card that might be sitting on someone's desk and say, oh, is that a new card that you got for some reason? And they'll go, oh no, I got this from my boss 5 years ago. She wrote me this and I really appreciate that she had called out all these, contributions that I had made. That has become a trophy, maybe $1 trophy. We've seen sticky notes. I can even say, I can say that there's still a sticky note that I wrote my daughter on her mirror that I wrote 6 years ago, a Post-it note with a little note. So any gesture of appreciation, and especially now, when you're not together, you can't read all the nonverbals. And think of a way you send a note to someone, put a stamp in it.
Yeah, go old school, skip the text and the email.
I mean, any extra way you can show appreciation is a key component of the behavior. It's kind of the cherry on the top of the cake, but really in many ways, one of the most important things.
Right, and it ignites commitment. That's what we want. Absolutely. That's the payoff for appreciation. You get commitment for it. So that's great. Thank you, Julie. So again, thank you for your time. Listen, we invite you to our website, the free tools access there. You can also just text the word leadership to 444-999 to elevate your coaching game. Remember, we've got to, not remember, but we'll tell you, please make a note that on June 23rd, the same time, 1 p.m. Central, we'll have another webinar. This one's going to be on inspiring healthy personal and business health. No. Healthy personal and business growth.
Yes.
Let me get that right. We just created it. Sorry about that, guys. So again, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate you. There's lots of resources on our site if you want, from 180-degree assessments to training to books to our own consulting and coaching to help you create a positive coaching culture in your organization, or if you need someone just to coach your leaders on up. If we didn't get to any questions, we apologize. We had a lot of questions come in. We always commit that within 48 hours, we'll send you an individual personalized response to your specific question. So don't be discouraged if we didn't get to it live here. Thanks again, and God bless us.